This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in EdTech, a spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver a highly effective, customized, and engaging learning experience for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hi there, I'm Ladek. This episode is part of a live, real-time series that I recorded at the 2022 EDUCAUSE conference in Denver, Colorado. In this conversation, I speak with Bart Pursel about Unizin and how we can better collaborate to use data for learner success. And just a quick reminder, you can make sure to never miss an episode of the podcast by subscribing at elearnmagazine.com. Now, I give you Bart Pursel.
Okay. Let's talk about data. Sure. Let's talk about something that's actually interesting to people who are listening.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about, the presentation that Kathy's going to be at, and several other panel members are going to be talking about data for learner success.
Yep.
So why don't we start there? Take me through what does that mean in the presentation that you're going to be having. I saw everything from learning pathways to analytics to bringing it back to the classroom and actually empowering professors and educators. So you give me the overview of what that presentation is going to look like.
Sure, and I'll try not to make it sound like a pitch. Although by the time people hear this, the presentation is probably going to be over, right? So it's not going to matter. Kathy O'Brien's our CEO at Unizin, and she's giving a talk today at 1 o'clock with some of our members on how they've taken what we call the Unizin Data Platform. I might slip into acronyms. The UDP is what we call that.
Okay.
So that's the Unizin Data Platform, and how members have taken different data from that platform and put them in the hands of, in some case, students, in some case, teachers, in some case, advisors, to try and move up as early in a semester as possible the ability to reach out to someone that might be struggling in different ways for different reasons, right? So it's a new data stream people haven't had access to before. I hate that phrase, data-driven in education. Data-informed, I prefer much better.
All right.
So, the people that receive this data, the data can't tell you that somebody had a bad breakup. The data can't tell you a lot of things, but it's just another data stream that, when given to a professional with other data streams and other experiences and relationship with the student, it can help uncover some more of those clues, right? They help inform when they reach out. So the data platform itself, just to give you a sense of what that is, it's really designed to bring together some information from the student information system. So usually things about students, things about courses, things about academic degrees and programs, learning management system data, and then learning tool data.
Okay.
So we have different sort of ingests that sort of bring that together and harmonize it with what we call the Unizin Common Data Model. It's really based off the Common Educational Data Standard that comes out of the federal government here in this country. So it puts the data in that shape, puts it in the data platform, so all of our members are looking at the same data, and then they can build applications on top of that. They can do different faculty research, they can do different cross-institutional research. Some opt to do that. There's sort of data governance and anonymization and privacy things all wrapped up that's complicated in that, but some choose to get together to do cross-institutional research. And the UDP is kind of the catalyst or the spark, the product that allows that to happen more quickly than it would otherwise, because we try and unify that data so other people don't have to. It makes it easier to just start with unified data from there. Instead of having to go through all that, find the data, aggregate it, clean it, transform it, and then work with it, we try and take care of all those steps and just get people to where they can work with it much more quickly.
So the first question out of my head is, since we're talking about Unizin, is it transferable? You talked about it goes through your platform, you shape it, it becomes available to reporting other. I'm sure you can connect APIs and those kinds of things to it. So, but this doesn't make data. It's the old Microsoft model. Does it trap it somewhere? Does it put it in a silo? Or is it open? Open to be used across sort of learning management platforms, across SISs, across those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And one thing we always make sure of is when Unizin founded in 2014, that was when we started to see sort of the first round of some analytics products and services and tools come out. And a lot of what we saw happening is that some of our vendor partners would ingest or take a lot of data from the university, put it in a black box, put a bunch of artificial intelligence around it, and out came some stuff. And it wouldn't really tell you what's going on in that box, and then you're essentially, in some instances, having to buy your data back.
Okay.
Right. So there were other providers that started to look at how can we monetize data. And it's not a bad thing, right? You know, it's not. I'm not trying to paint that in a bad picture, but it's like, okay.
Well, you have to. I mean, we're all sitting at this conference, right? I mean, I'm gonna, like, LinkedIn is right there, right? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone's trying to monetize data.
Right.
At the end of the day, right?
So one of the things that we believe as a consortium is that our members should never have to buy their own data back, and their data should never be put into a black box, right? A black box algorithm that they don't know how things are coming out the other end, like what processes and statistics are going on around those. So from that perspective, it's open in that each member institution has their own what we call UDP tenant. So the data doesn't mingle unless the universities explicitly want it to mingle. Okay. Right? And they have their own processes and things like that guide us in helping them work across the institutions. So in that respect, like it's all sort of isolated to the institutions. But what we can do is when one institution, for example, I'll call it Michigan. Michigan has an application called My Learning Analytics. It's like a student-facing application that's designed to help students build metacognitive skills, time management, lifelong learning, those kinds of things. And that sits on top of the Unizin data platform. Okay. So what we've been able to do now is host that on behalf of the consortium. Michigan, since you're Unizin, if you can host this for us, we'd like to make this available. Sure. So we now have other members of the consortium standing up, their own versions of the My Learning Analytics application. So students can now see that inside the Canvas at the University of Florida, for example, which is another member, and at Penn State, and those kinds of places. So we're trying to do more of that. It turns out it's hard because oftentimes people mingle the Unizin data platform data with local data sources. So some of our members use advising data in different ways, and that data comes into an application next to the Unizin data. So in those instances, it's kind of hard for us to host an application because it's not solely on the Unizin data platform, right? It's local, it's localized, it's within that environment of that institution with our data platform as a part of it. But we are working to create more data marts and APIs that we may not be able to host the entire application. But if people have interesting representations of student activity or engagements, you see a lot of people that have really different ways to calculate student activity and create analytics around that. And the thing that's interesting from the research side, statistical methods are different. Some of the data inputs are different. They all seem to work for what they're doing, right? Whether it's advisor-facing, student-facing, faculty-facing, they all seem to generate interesting analytics that help inform decision-making.
So I want to take me there because one of the interesting conversations I've had over the last year beyond engagement, because that's I think I almost feel like that's, for lack of a better, that's like a platform. If you're thinking in terms of software, like engagement is the platform. Do you have any specific success stories that you could talk about, both around identifying challenged learners, so learners at risk, but also I think there's more and more people that are interested in talking about extracurricular or advanced learners or learners of they're excelling and say, wait, we need to take them in. Can you? I love specificity. Like, could you give would you have any of those kind of success stories?
Yeah, we'll start with kind of the first example there. Some examples where students maybe were in distress, or students where the data helped with that. So COVID was a great example of when everyone's remote, right? The data becomes increasingly important at that point. So there was one instance, and at this point I was at Penn State, which was a Unizin member, so we had an application there that essentially registered every 24 hours, did three things. So first, it collected all the activity data in every course, mostly from Canvas, but they've added top hat and some other data streams now. Okay. So it first collects all the event data from each course. And then what it does is it calculates a rolling 7-day average of each student in every class. The reason for that is some students come in every Sunday all day to the learning management system, some spread it out, right? So the rolling 7-day average captures some of that differences in work streams. And then if you have that data, a rolling 7-day average for a student, you can create what you might think of as like the average fictitious student in that course.
And then you kind of create a model, or you
and then every 24 hours you do comparisons. So every 24 hours you're comparing against that fictitious average student, and sometimes you see students drastically go like this, right, in the data. It's like, okay, well, that's wrong. And the interface has ways to try and draw your attention to scenarios, right, in the data. And what we had happen is an advisor, this was an advisor-facing application, the advisor reached out to the student, and the student had COVID, right? And all the universities had all sorts of protocols, right? So if you get COVID, all the support kicks in. What had happened is he lived with 3 roommates that all got COVID before him.
Right.
So he called his home physician in a different state, said, here's what's going on. What should I do? And the physician said, I'm pretty sure you have COVID. Don't do anything, right? Stay home. So the university COVID sort of support mechanisms never caught it, never kicked in.
Right. He never ended up reporting in and those guys. Right.
Yeah, so it never kind of went through the channels that are supposed to catch those. Right. And it turned out that happened a lot more than you would guess, right? That, family physicians going home because people felt sick. So advisors were almost the first ones to know in those instances because of the data. Mm-hmm. The data showed these sharp declines in the students that had very active patterns of engagement. So that was kind of interesting, and one of the first examples we saw there in that case where, it's the advisor is the one now to kind of activate all the support mechanisms and things like that versus the office that was kind of the COVID office that was also doing that in some cases. So
I want to go to the like advancing student, right? The one who that we're looking at. Wow, we need to maybe give a different kind of support. But speaking of that avatar that you're creating, is that something that you could also do a cross-institutional comparison and create like either regional avatars or even just a whole system-wide avatar? Is that possible as well?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it something people would want to see done?
Sure, I know that.
Right.
Minority Report.
Yeah. One thing we find at Unizin is, our members are very collaborative and they share and they work together very well, but there's a fine line there when you start comparing them to one another.
Okay.
Right? And sometimes data can paint ill-informed pictures, sometimes not that flattering of pictures sometimes, right? Okay. Sometimes data loses context and culture. So sometimes you could do that, but at the current moment, we don't necessarily do those kinds of things. Universities sometimes opt into them at Unizin. Okay. So sometimes there's universities that introductory STEM courses is a big one. Right? Some campuses call those weed out, or faculty, I should say, call those weed out courses, right? We're going to let the students into physics, right? They need to clear this entry-level physics course that's hard by design.
Sure.
So sometimes our institutions will pull together groups of physics instructors and people that run those courses and say, okay, let's pull data now across these 3 institutions, specifically at those entry-level courses, and see if we can understand how can we use technology and tools and what behaviors do we see that are sort of indicative of successful students, and then try and promote those and scaffold those and draw attention, right? So here's what it usually leads to positive outcomes here, right? These are the kinds of behaviors we see that generally lead to, an A, B, or C, not a D or an F or a withdrawal, on that layer of courses. So those things are they happen the more opt-in, right?
Well, and let's take that. I kind of maybe want to circle back there because I'm interested in the people, as we're moving into the future. I'm interested in the person. Let's just ask it right now. Like the personalities in a system that are interested in more of those kind of collaborative, connective, holistic thoughts around, institution-wide, regional-wide, system-wide, regional-wide, those kinds of, and the people who are kind of more like, do you find that it's personality to personality, it's person to person, kind of just what, it's the same person who maybe I'm kind of leading the witness here, somebody who loves social media, somebody who's like, no way, I'm not even going to put my face out there. Do you find those same personalities?
It's personalities, it's culture. Culture is a part of it too. And everyone is on some sort of a continuum here where at the one extreme end it's, oh my gosh, this data is scary, we should really look at it, it might illuminate things we don't want to see, to the other end, which is I think more of where Unizin sits and our members are either sort of getting there or aspiring to be there. Let's democratize data for the people that need it to help inform their decisions on their job every day. Right? Let's try and get the right data to the right person at the right time, inform the decisions that they need to make, right, on a daily basis. In our world, it's mostly around student success initiatives. Okay. I was at a leadership institute the other week, and somebody not from the Unizin Consortium spent months putting together sort of a data platform for an administrative group. And they put it in front of the primary stakeholder in the administration, and that person said, this really sort of enables curiosity that I'm not really comfortable with.
Ooh, wow! I want to use that as a soundbite. That is fantastic.
Right. And,
enabling curiosity that I'm not comfortable with.
Right. And again, is it that person's personality? Maybe. Is it the culture of that university that person sits within? Maybe. I've heard of some other schools that have a really strong sort of faculty shared governance model, and the faculty sometimes worry that, okay, the lens is kind of on the students and the curriculum now. It's not much to turn that lens to the faculty, right? Like, and some faculty get really anxious that, okay, like, we see the writing on the wall, and none of our members are doing this, by the way. I mean, they're not sort of trying to use data to look at faculty, and, that's not happening. But some faculty get really nervous, and they have really strong voices that are advocating against sort of even that first part of that journey.
But there's all those cognitive biases. Even if you start, if you go in with all positive, sort of benign intention, all of your biases and your cognitive, those things come in as well. So I can see why some people say, look, there's just don't even give access. I had a great conversation, I think it was yesterday actually on the podcast, with talking about how so many organizations and like the payment systems around schools, like you don't even allow access to like the full card number. You never see, you only see the 4 digits because you don't need to see it, right? So anyway, those kinds of things. Right?
Yeah, and it's in places like EDUCAUSE too, right? They do a lot of these quick surveys around all sorts of great topics. Some of it's analytics, and one of the things that I'm reading on some of the EDUCAUSE things is it's data literacy and training, right? It's like, it's one thing about how you make it available and get it into more people's hands, but those people also need to understand, okay, what does this mean?
Right.
How do I act with this data in an ethical way, a way that respects privacy? A great example we see with some of our consortium members that build mostly faculty-facing interfaces, right, that leverage data to kind of show faculty. So, for the one example for Penn State, here's a student sort of graph of how they engage the different learning ecosystem. Here's that sort of average student, right?
Right.
And some are even splitting it up now. Like, here's what an A student graph looks like. By that. So some faculty members just say, hey, I'm going to just turn this on in a Zoom meeting with the student in office hours and show them the graph. Well, I'm not sure if that's the right way to go in every situation, because some students might just see that and think, I need to just click around Canvas, right? And some people, there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that situation. There's sometimes you might want to do that, right? Depending on how you're having that conversation, your relationship with that student, what kind of course you're teaching, right? There are other times that you just want to use that data to sort of inform how you're going to talk to that student, right? You might not even say, hey, I have this graph I have access to, it's telling me this. Graph is one of dozens of data points.
I'm just also thinking as well, like the difference between, I don't know, I'm gonna really murder some avatars here, but let's just say, your English lit major and your data science major, or, someone who's sports science versus, although that's probably really data driven as well. And I'm just thinking that the diversity across possible degrees. I'm thinking, the Berkeley College of Music is going to have a whole different set of students as opposed to MIT, kind of, even though they're both in Boston, right? And so, I guess my question is, you're a CTO. I mean, this is what you do. Tech is your life. Data is your life. How are we leveling up the data game? Like, if I'm a professor, I'm talking to students. Is it just we're seeing now that a general understanding of data and those things are coming in with that person, or is it still just really variable about? I'm kind of stupid about science-based stuff.
I think it's not maybe stupid about science, but it's certainly variable, right? I mean, people have different levels of data. I talked to a CIO, and again, this isn't someone in Unizin, who said, hey, anytime I'm going to bring somebody into my tech organization, they either have to have knowledge in SQL or sort of advanced spreadsheet. That's everyone, right? Anyone that walks in here. So that CEO was all in on sort of the data literacy. I need, no matter what their role is, I need people to understand data, right? That's a little aggressive, right? But that's kind of,
and it's also interesting. It builds a culture that only looks at things in one way. It creates a hammer.
Maybe.
Right?
I think there's a broad, I know this person well, so there's a broader collection of things going on.
Yeah.
But that was just how important at one point in time that was to this individual. It's like, I want to make sure everybody had some literacy.
Yeah.
Right? And how to do that.
And you gotta have some criteria for who you're going to select.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Yeah. One of the things, though, going back to the comment about diversity of classes, of students, and campuses, the thing we're trying to do now is going back to like our members are all calculating this notion of activity or engagement differently. They all seem to work well. There's some sort of matrix out there that needs a lot of research. It's like, okay, if you teach a grad level discussion based course, this is probably maybe the most representative way you can try and use the technology data to calculate some meaningful metric analytics or engagement, right? If you teach that introductory 400-person biology course, it might look like this. If you're teaching hybrid, it might look like this, right? So that's one of the things I'm excited about because we have so many members calculating activity or engagement analytics differently. That's a good next step for us at Unizin, trying to understand why do some work better than others in different contexts and different modalities, right? And try and tease that out. The whole goal being how do we make these analytics available, maybe not necessarily applications, but the analytic representations available across our consortium and almost like a menu or plug and play environment. Right? So depending on whether you're an advisor, a student, or a faculty member, you have access to some kind of visualization dashboard. You can best select some sort of representation of engagement or analytics that resonates with the modality, the pedagogy, and the course design.
How far are we from the Canva of data visualization?
The what of data?
Canva. So they took Adobe and made it accessible. You open up your browser and you and I can create a really professional looking graphic and no skills, right?
Yep.
So I know like BI is out there. I know you got Tableau. These where it's, it's kind of drag and drop. Are we there? Like so?
Yes and no. And it's kind of interesting. I had a lot of conversations coming up to EDUCAUSE with different members of the Unizin leadership board, and that's a trend. Power BI and Tableau and all that sweet genre of things is growing on campus, which I think is good, right? It's sort of democratizing data. But if you think about where a lot of our data is stored and sort of the method in which it's sort of collected, it's big, it's untenuous, it's intimidating. So the Unizin data platform, just to give you a sense of scale, the average UDP tenant's about 11 terabytes. Some of our bigger tenants can see 5 million events a day coming from students that stream in real time, right? So I mean, Tableau's not going to help you much when you're coming into that sort of raw cloud-based world. Where we're at now is we're trying to draw together the high-value data points, run some calculations on them, and present them in what we call data marts, which are essentially a series of flat tables. Tableau and Power BI do play nicely there. It doesn't require all what my colleague calls SQL gymnastics to wrestle all that stuff together, right, and do those kind of things. So yeah, there you go. That's even better. So we are trying to kind of bridge that gap where you don't need as many technical resources. You can have people that know a little bit about Power BI and Tableau, as long as you provide sort of a layer above the raw sort of database and event data, right? You sort of combine it into a part. Better yet, APIs. We might get to that here down the road as well. But right now, we're going from it's that data information knowledge wisdom hierarchy, right? We sit at the data layer. Our members typically were the ones that took our data, took their own data for the platform and made information and knowledge. We're trying to help bridge into that information layer with them. It's like, okay, what's the most important data? How do we create sort of bespoke data marts for specific types of end users and make that much more easy to get a hold of, right? Do things with that.
Last question for you. Let's round it out because I want to go back to that identifying that high student, that that or class or professor or whatever. Like, talk to me. What's an example that you have there of? Wow, we didn't expect this, and we need to find a new way to support them, or this person needs to shift somehow.
So the obvious place for analytics to start is that on the other side of that fence, right? And that's kind of where the examples go. But you're absolutely right. The idea with analytics is not only can we sort of pull up sort of the floor, we want to raise the roof as well, right? We want to sort of move everything up a little bit. So that includes how do you figure out what's happening at the top. We have some people that have found interesting trend data there where if you look at different courses across universities, there are some courses in which the highest performers, just from a data perspective, look like the lowest performers, right? They don't show up much in the data, they don't show up much in the LMS, right? They don't show up much because they don't have to, right? They're well prepared, they maybe already knew the knowledge coming from previous course or high school. So at that point, it's sort of interesting because the data paints sort of an inaccurate picture. You have to figure out how to bring in other data like current grade, things like that, to balance out the data to make sure people don't misrepresent them as the ones that actually need academic support. Because clearly their academics are fine.
Yeah,
they're just bored. Right? You know?
Yeah.
You need different ways to engage them. So we've seen it in the data. We haven't seen anyone come up with sort of individual strategies yet, aside from just recognizing and promoting it. Like, hey, look, you're doing a great job, right? I can see your grades are really well. I see the last exam you did really well, and just that notion of providing just an acknowledgement from time to time helps keep those people engaged. Maybe sometimes even brings them back. I'd love to see peer tutoring, peer learning opportunities, leading study group opportunities, those kinds of things. When you start to identify those people that know their stuff and just don't appear to be engaged.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I that's really where I find a lot of excitement for myself in these applications because, as you said, when you have maybe one or two high performers in each class, how can they then lift the whole class up? And then, I don't know, I feel like there's also that opportunity, how you let them geek out or high perform, I don't know, whatever you want to they kind of have that, like, hey, let's go flex a little bit. Without necessarily creating a divide, right?
Yeah.
Because that's also a danger as well. I think that you would start to divide out people just like you would divide out low performers. So.
Yeah. But no, I think that's hopefully where we get to soon. Is we're at that first layer. It's the obvious layer. How do you use data to identify people that may be struggling that we can reach out to as early as possible, much earlier than we did in the past? But yeah, the next step is how do you figure it out for everyone? So analytics for the whole analytics for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to come over and speak to me today. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best for the conference. And you're speaking what? I think you're speaking in about 2 hours.
Yeah,
so 1 o'clock.
Yeah, Kathy's up at 1 o'clock, and then I have a poster session tomorrow with some members of the consortium at 10:15, 3 maybe. So I'll be around.
Thanks so much.
It's fun talking.
Yeah, I'm great.
You too.
Thanks again for joining me for the eLearn podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. Just push subscribe on your player right now. And remember, you can join the conversation live on YouTube, Facebook, and my LinkedIn feed every week. I hope to see you there. Thanks.